Have you ever wondered how the roads you drive on, the schools you attend, or the hospitals you visit are paid for? These are all examples of public services which are essential for the well-being and functioning of society. Public services include everything from emergency response and law enforcement to libraries and sanitation. But providing these services requires significant funding. In this video, we'll explore the various ways public services are funded, who is responsible for paying, and why this system is so important for everyone. Let's start by understanding what public services actually are and why they matter to our daily lives. Public services are services provided by the government or its agencies to benefit all members of society. These include education, healthcare, transportation, public safety, and more. Unlike private goods, public services are typically available to everyone, regardless of income or status. They are designed to promote social welfare and ensure that basic needs are met for all citizens. Understanding what qualifies as a public service helps us appreciate the importance of funding these essential resources. Next, let's look at who is responsible for providing these services. Public services are primarily provided by different levels of government: local, regional, and national. Local governments often handle services like waste collection, water supply, and local policing. Regional or state governments may manage transportation networks or education systems. National governments typically oversee defense, large infrastructure projects, and national healthcare policies. Sometimes, these services are delivered directly by government employees, while in other cases, private companies are contracted to provide them. The key point is that the government ensures these services are available to everyone. Funding is the backbone of public services. Without adequate financial resources, it would be impossible to maintain roads, pay teachers, or keep hospitals running. Proper funding ensures that services are reliable, accessible, and of high quality. When funding falls short, the quality and availability of these services can decline, affecting everyone in the community. That's why understanding how public services are funded is crucial for appreciating their value and sustainability. Now, let's dive into the main sources of funding for public services. The primary source of funding for public services is taxation. Taxes are collected from individuals and businesses and then allocated to various government programs and services. However, taxes aren't the only source. Governments also receive funding from fees, fines, and sometimes profits from government-owned enterprises. Additionally, grants and loans from higher levels of government or international organizations can supplement local budgets. Let's take a closer look at each of these funding sources. Starting with taxes. Taxes are mandatory payments made by individuals and businesses to the government. These funds are then used to pay for public services. There are many types of taxes, including income tax, sales tax, property tax, and corporate tax. Each type of tax targets different sources of revenue, ensuring that the government can collect enough money to fund essential services. The amount of tax collected depends on the economy, tax rates, and compliance. Next, let's break down the main types of taxes in more detail. Income tax is one of the most significant sources of government revenue. It is collected from individuals and businesses based on their earnings. The more you earn, the more tax you typically pay, especially in progressive tax systems. Income tax helps fund a wide range of public services, from education to healthcare. Governments may adjust income tax rates to respond to economic conditions or policy goals. Let's see how income tax compares to other forms of taxation. Sales tax is another important source of public funding. It is applied to the purchase of goods and services. Every time you buy something, a percentage of the price goes to the government as sales tax. This tax is usually included in the price you pay at stores or online. Sales tax revenue is often used to fund local and state services, such as transportation and public safety. The rate of sales tax can vary widely depending on where you live. Property tax is charged on the value of land and buildings owned by individuals or businesses. Local governments often rely heavily on property taxes to fund schools, police, fire departments, and other community services. The amount you pay depends on the value of your property and the local tax rate. Property taxes are usually paid annually or semi-annually. This type of tax helps ensure that those who benefit from local services contribute to their funding. Corporate tax is paid by businesses on their profits. This tax is an important source of revenue for national and sometimes local governments. The rate of corporate tax can influence business decisions, investment, and economic growth. Governments may offer tax incentives to encourage certain activities, such as research or hiring. Corporate tax revenue is used to fund a variety of public services, including infrastructure and social programs. Besides income, sales, property, and corporate taxes, there are other taxes that contribute to public funding. These include excise taxes on specific goods like alcohol, tobacco, and fuel, as well as inheritance and capital gains taxes. Each of these taxes targets different activities or assets, helping to diversify government revenue streams By collecting a variety of taxes, governments can better manage economic fluctuations and ensure stable funding for public services. In addition to taxes, governments collect fees and charges for specific services. For example, you might pay a fee for a driver's license, a building permit, or using a public facility. These fees are usually set to cover the cost of providing the service rather than generating profit. While fees make up a smaller portion of public funding compared to taxes, they are important for maintaining certain services and ensuring that users contribute directly to their cost. Fines and penalties are another source of government revenue. These are charges imposed for breaking laws or regulations, such as speeding tickets or environmental violations. While the main purpose of fines is to discourage undesirable behavior, the money collected can also help fund public services. However, fines are not a reliable or primary source of funding, as they depend on enforcement and compliance rates. Some governments own businesses or enterprises that generate profits. Examples include public utilities, transportation companies, or postal services. The profits from these enterprises can be used to fund other public services or reduce the need for higher taxes. However, not all government-owned enterprises are profitable, and their contribution to public funding varies widely depending on the country and sector. Grants and transfers are funds provided by higher levels of government or international organizations to support local or regional services. For example, a national government might give grants to states for education or infrastructure projects. These funds help ensure that all regions have access to essential services, even if their local tax base is small. Grants and transfers are especially important in countries with significant regional differences in wealth. Sometimes, governments need to borrow money to fund public services, especially for large projects like highways or hospitals. Loans can come from banks, investors, or international organizations. Borrowing allows governments to invest in infrastructure and services now, paying back the debt over time. However, too much borrowing can lead to financial problems, so it's important for governments to manage debt responsibly. Once funds are collected, governments must decide how to allocate them. This process is called budgeting. Budgets are developed annually and outline how much money will be spent on different services, such as education, healthcare, defense, and transportation. Budgeting requires balancing priorities, forecasting future needs, and ensuring that spending does not exceed available resources. Effective budgeting is key to maintaining high-quality public services. Transparency and accountability are essential in public service funding. Citizens have the right to know how their money is being spent. Governments often publish budget reports and financial statements to show where funds are allocated. Independent audits and oversight bodies help ensure that funds are used properly and efficiently. This transparency builds trust and helps prevent corruption or misuse of public money. Funding public services is not without challenges. Economic downturns, tax evasion, and changing demographics can all impact government revenue. Sometimes, there are disagreements about how funds should be allocated or which services should be prioritized. Balancing the needs of different groups while maintaining financial stability is a constant challenge for policymakers. Let's look at some common issues governments face in funding public services. Economic conditions can greatly affect public service funding. During recessions, tax revenues often decline as people earn and spend less. This can force governments to cut services or find alternative funding sources. Conversely, during periods of economic growth, governments may have more resources to invest in new or expanded services. Managing these ups and downs is a key part of public finance. Tax evasion and avoidance can undermine public service funding. When individuals or businesses fail to pay their fair share of taxes, the government has less money to spend on essential services. Tax evasion is illegal, while tax avoidance uses legal loopholes to reduce tax bills. Both practices can create unfairness and force governments to raise taxes elsewhere or cut services. Combating tax evasion and closing loopholes is vital for sustainable funding. Demographic changes, such as an aging population or population growth, can impact the demand for public services and the ability to fund them. For example, more elderly citizens may increase the need for healthcare and pensions, while a growing population may require more schools and infrastructure. Governments must adapt their funding strategies to meet these changing needs and ensure that services remain accessible to all. Political decisions play a major role in how public funds are allocated. Different governments may prioritize different services, such as healthcare, defense, or education. These priorities can shift with elections or changes in leadership. Public debate and participation are important for ensuring that funding decisions reflect the needs and values of the community. Balancing the budget means ensuring that government spending does not exceed its income. This is a fundamental principle of public finance. When budgets are not balanced, governments may need to borrow money or cut services. Long-term deficits can lead to debt problems and limit future spending. Careful planning and fiscal discipline are necessary to maintain a healthy balance between income and expenditure. Citizens play a vital role in public service funding. By paying taxes, voting, and participating in public discussions, people help shape funding decisions. Public input can influence which services are prioritized and how funds are allocated. Engaged communities are more likely to have services that reflect their needs and values. Technology is transforming how public services are funded and delivered. Online tax filing, digital payment systems, and data analytics help governments collect and manage funds more efficiently. Technology also enables greater transparency, allowing citizens to track spending and hold officials accountable. As technology evolves, it will continue to shape the future of public service funding. Different countries fund public services in different ways. Some rely more on income taxes, while others use higher sales or value-added taxes. The balance between local and national funding also varies. International organizations, such as the World Bank or United Nations, may provide grants or loans to support public services in developing countries. Comparing systems helps us understand the strengths and challenges of different approaches. Let's take a closer look at how education is funded. In many countries, schools are funded through a combination of local property taxes, state or regional grants, and national government support. This mix ensures that schools have the resources they need, but it can also create disparities between wealthy and less affluent areas. Addressing these inequalities is a major challenge for policymakers. Healthcare funding varies widely around the world. Some countries have publicly funded healthcare systems where services are paid for through taxes and available to all. Others rely more on private insurance or out-of-pocket payments. Public healthcare funding helps ensure that everyone has access to medical care regardless of income. Balancing costs and quality is a key issue in healthcare funding. Infrastructure projects, such as roads, bridges, and public transit, require significant investment. Funding often comes from a mix of taxes, government bonds, and sometimes private partnerships. These projects are essential for economic growth and quality of life. Governments must plan carefully to ensure that infrastructure investments are sustainable and meet the needs of the community. Emergency services, such as police, fire, and ambulance, are funded primarily through local taxes and government budgets. These services are critical for public safety and require reliable funding to ensure quick response times and adequate staffing. Some communities also rely on grants or fundraising to support emergency services, especially in rural areas. Sometimes, governments partner with private companies to fund and deliver public services. These public-private partnerships can bring additional resources and expertise, especially for large projects like highways or hospitals. However, they also require careful oversight to ensure that public interests are protected and that services remain accessible and affordable. Nonprofit organizations and philanthropists sometimes contribute to funding public services, especially in areas like education, healthcare, and social welfare. These contributions can supplement government funding and help address gaps in service. However, relying too much on private donations can create uncertainty and may not be sustainable in the long term. Some public services are funded through user fees or tolls. For example, drivers may pay tolls to use certain roads or bridges, and public transit systems often charge fares. These fees help cover the cost of maintaining and operating the service. While user fees can make services more self-sustaining, they can also limit access for those who cannot afford to pay. Environmental services, such as parks, clean water, and pollution control, are funded through a mix of taxes, fees, and grants. Some governments also use environmental taxes or charges to encourage sustainable behavior, such as carbon taxes or recycling fees. Funding environmental services is crucial for public health and the long-term well-being of communities. Social welfare programs such as unemployment benefits, food assistance, and housing support are funded primarily through taxes and government budgets. These programs help protect vulnerable populations and promote social stability. Funding social welfare requires balancing compassion with fiscal responsibility to ensure that programs are effective and sustainable. Cultural and recreational services, such as museums, libraries, and sports facilities, are funded through a combination of public funds, user fees, and private donations. These services enrich community life and promote well-being. Ensuring access to cultural and recreational opportunities is an important part of public service funding. Governments are constantly seeking new ways to fund public services. Innovations include crowdfunding for community projects, social impact bonds, and green bonds for environmental initiatives. These new approaches can attract private investment and engage citizens in funding decisions. However, they also require careful planning and oversight to ensure effectiveness. Equity in public service funding means ensuring that everyone has access to essential services. regardless of income or location. This may require redistributing funds from wealthier to poorer areas or providing subsidies for those in need. Equity is a key principle in public finance and helps promote social cohesion and opportunity. Sustainable funding ensures that public services can be maintained over the long term. This means balancing current needs with future obligations, avoiding excessive debt, and investing in services that will benefit generations to come. Sustainable funding is essential for building resilient communities and maintaining public trust. The way public services are funded has a direct impact on their quality, accessibility, and effectiveness. Well-funded services can improve health, education, safety, and overall quality of life. Conversely, underfunded services can lead to inequality, poor outcomes, and social unrest. Understanding the impact of funding helps us appreciate the importance of supporting public services. Looking ahead, the funding of public services will continue to evolve. Demographic shifts, technological advances, and changing economic conditions will all shape how services are funded and delivered. Governments will need to adapt to new challenges and opportunities, ensuring that public services remain effective and accessible for all. To sum up, public services are essential for society and require reliable funding. Taxes are the main source, but fees, fines, grants, and other methods also play a role. Effective budgeting, transparency, and public participation are key to ensuring that services are well-funded and meet community needs. Challenges will always exist, but with careful planning and innovation, we can build a strong foundation for the future. Understanding how public services are funded helps us appreciate the value of these services and the importance of contributing to their support. Whether through taxes, participation, or advocacy, everyone has a role to play in maintaining the services that make our communities safe, healthy, and vibrant. By staying informed, we can help ensure that public services continue to benefit everyone, now and in the future. Public services are the backbone of a functioning society, and their funding is a shared responsibility. By understanding the different ways these services are funded, we can better appreciate their importance and advocate for fair and sustainable systems. As our world changes, so too will the ways we fund and deliver public services. Staying engaged and informed is the best way to ensure that these vital services continue to serve everyone for generations to come.